So, welcome everyone to this second EuroDIG Extra. EuroDIG Extra is a new format for ad hoc discussions organized in an ad hoc manner. It gives us the opportunity to react on certain issues on a very short notice. And we had a IGF open consultation last week, and we found that there was a very interesting and lively discussion about a multi-stakeholder high-level body and the development of the IGF Plus model. And we thought it would be good that we have a discussion among European stakeholders as well, possibly with the aim to find a consensus on this. We would like to give and reply on the survey that is currently out. And Mark Cavell will moderate the discussion, and let's see how far we get here. What we will do, we will concentrate only on question 1 of the survey. We will not go into the depth of all the questions, only on question 1. And we believe that once we have a consensus on question 1, or at least a joint position or a shared view, let's be a little bit more diplomatic in these terms, then it would be easy to find answers thereafter on all the other questions of the survey. First of all, I'm glad to invite Giacomo Mazzone. He is a member of the IGF Strategy Working Group that produced an outcome where 3 approaches are described. And without further ado, I would like to hand over to Giacomo. Giacomo, I will share the screen for you with the 3 approaches and kindly ask you to walk us through the 3 approaches in a descriptive manner. So, share my screen now. You should see the screen. Giacomo, please go ahead.
Yes, yeah, I can see. Okay, thank you very much for this invitation. I think that this is a collective work where each one has done its part. So I think that we have to consider that we have to use all the collective wisdom that we can have. Before to enter in the single paragraph, I want to remember you that there are many similarities within the approaches, the various approaches that we have in the document. For instance, the purpose, it's more or less the same in all the 3 approaches. The same is for the functions. Practically, we have the same function all over the 3 different options. And in all option also this new body, the high-level body, is practically seen as an integral part of the IGF. So all approaches are multi-stakeholder and build on the experience of the MAG. So I think that we need to concentrate on what could be the various differences and interpretation that we have. Let's go through the purpose. Having said in premises that there are many similarities between the 3 options. In approach A, let's say that the accent is the fact that this body is under the UN Secretary General or the Tech Envoy. So this is an option which we need to reflect and to discuss. And that this will be used for high-level pressing issues that then can be further discussed within the IGF MAG. So, or in the best practice forum, etc., etc. This is the approach A. In the approach B, the high-level body is called MAG Plus and will be composed by a high-level body that it's a part of the approach, and then can be called the executive committee in the document, and then we have the rest of the MAG that is part of it. So this executive committee or leadership team has the function to ensure the linkages between what is being discussed within the MAG and the IGF in general and the existing decision-making bodies. So for me, this means, for instance, a function that is partially performed today by the with the presence within the MAG by the different representative international organizations, for instance, but at the moment this person have to ensure the link are low level in the hierarchy, so they are not able to bring to the attention of their bodies the problems and the solutions that are discussed within the MAG. So with this solution MAG Plus, the level of the interlocution will be higher than in the previous existing experience. Then there is the approach C, that it defined where both bodies, the MHLB and the current MAG, exist within a single structure that is called IGF Multi-Stakeholder Leadership Council, or simply the IGF Council. And this means that this body has two functions. One is the ensure what is currently made by the IGF MAG, working on the yearly program, while the IGF leadership group will be more on the intersessional, focusing on the intersessional activities and in the long-term perspective of the action. So it's a little bit a sum of the two functions that are described in approach A and approach B. If we go to the next section of the document, there is the function. Can you move to the next slide? Thank you, Sandra. So function, we have, again, a sort of equivalency about what we are thinking to do in the free approach, but with some slight difference. In approach A, the main role is that the MHB will have to advise the UN Secretary General and the tech envoy on strategic issues based on IGF discussions. Will deliver strategic inputs, always based on the reflection that has been done within the IGF, and will give suggestion to the MAG about the annual program. For instance, if there are urgent issues that are discussed in other fora, this need to be bring back to the attention of the MAG to be included in the yearly program. Also, in approach A, offers strategic feedback on draft policy approaches and recommendation from the forum, like, for instance, on policy networks, like the best practice forum, etc., etc. Also, another function is to advocate for the IGF and IGF Plus and bring and extend the outreach of the messages coming out from the IGF, bringing it to the other relevant fora. For instance, if we have in the MHLB representative of the parliaments, or representative of governments, or representative of international organization, or even business partners, they will have to engage to bring to the attention of the respective constituencies what has been discussed in the IGF. And we know that this is one of the weak points currently of the IGF. In approach B, more or less many of the functions remain as in approach A, because, for instance, this body has to advise the UNSG and the tech envoy on strategic issues based on IGF discussions. They address and raise urgent issues. They again relay the proposed policies approach coming out from the forum in other international fora, etc., etc. In approach C, is more or less like in option A, with small differences like that are listed in the document. So I will not go in detail in each of that, but you can see that there are some different appreciation, let's say. If we go to the composition, then thank you. If we go to the composition, in approach A, we are talking of 25 members for this new body that are beside the 40 that are in the MAG. In approach B, that is a leadership team, this is reduced to 5 persons on the top of the 40 MAG members. In the approach C, you have more or less 20 people from the MHLB and 30 for the MAG members. But the composition in all the 3 approaches is the same. So we have a stakeholders group, all stakeholders group represented, and according to criteria of nomination that are the same, basically, that are today used by the MAG. The selection method, that is the next point on the document. Selection method, as I mentioned before, is exactly the same. So the principle for which these people are selected are the same, either for MAG and for the MHLB. The difference is in the next point, that is the profile of the members. Let's say that, trying to simplify, what is in the profile of the MHLB is that we look for high-level senior minister level on government, or head of organization, international organization, civil society, head of private sector. So very high-level representation. While the MAG will be, as it is today, representative of the grassroots of the society, all global representative from grassroots. The relation with the IGF, it remains part of the same structure as it is today. While the relation with the MAG, how this interaction will be performed in approach A, the link will happen through the 2 chairs. So we have 2 chairs, but they interact, one being the vice chair of the other in the other group. So there is a strict link. In the approach B, the leadership team is separate within MAG, but under the same chair. So you have a vice chair for one and vice chair for other, for instance, but under the same leadership. In approach C, you have 2 bodies with 2 entities within the same body, the IGF Council, but with distinct duties. Let's say that the IGF leadership will work on the long term, while the MAG will work on the annual program. Working modalities, it's more or less, the different modalities are explained by the fact that the composition is different. Because there is high-level people in the MHLB, we cannot ask them to devote the same amount of time that the MAG devotes. So there will be less meeting for this the MHLB in approach A, and also in the other approaches. And there will be, in any case, common moment between the MHLB and the MAG, so that there can be a fruitful exchange. And then for funding and the support, more or less is the same thing for in all 3 hypotheses. That's all. I think that we need now to concentrate on the exchange. So I leave the floor to Sandra and Mark for the rest.
Thank you very much, Giacomo. And before I hand over to Mark, who will be moderating the session, just to let you know, I will be monitoring the chat if there are any comments and questions. I know sometimes there's a lot of discussion going on in the chat, but please make sure that if you want to have your point on the record, you need to say it out loud, or so that it's on the transcript and on the recording, because the chat, as you know, will not be public. And if you want to make a point that should go into the decision and into the discussion, please make your point. Alternatively, you can ask me to read it out loud, and I can do that for you if you have problems to connect. And with this, and another point of order, we will set up a timer, and the approximate speaking time for each person should be 3 minutes. It's not a hard stop, shouldn't be a hard stop, but let's try to organize a bit and stick to the 3 minutes for each speaker. And with this, I hand over to Mark. Mark, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Sandra, and I'm very pleased to assist this important EuroDIG extra dialogue session, called at short notice because the focus of this is the questionnaire survey, which the IGF Secretariat and the Office of Technology Envoy and the UN DESA has issued with a very tight deadline, as I think most people are aware, 8 March, if I remember right. So I'm very pleased to be here. For those who don't know me, I'm an independent consultant and associate member of EuroDIG. I'm a former policy advisor for the UK government Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport on internet governance. And I've seen the IGF from pretty much the early days. I came into the ministry with the internet governance dossier in 2008, and I've been to most IGF since then and have seen it go through evolution, improvements, its mandate renewed by the UN General Assembly. I've seen all that process at pretty much close quarters and have been an active participant in many IGF sessions. So we're at a very important time for the future evolution of the Multi-Stakeholder Global Forum on Internet Governance, the IGF. I mentioned mandate just now. The mandate comes up for renewal by the General Assembly in 2025. So it's important now to institute the kind of changes and reforms and improvements that the high-level panel that the UN Secretary General convened and reported on digital cooperation, including architecture, including strengthening the IGF. All of this is very timely and critical for the future course of multi-stakeholder internet governance. And my reading of the paragraph is that this proposal for a high-level board is not set in stone. It's up to stakeholders to react to this proposal, it's the questionnaire is basically designed to solicit views on should it be implemented, and if so, how. And as Sandra explained, we want to focus on question 1 in the questionnaire survey that's been issued, which is about the functions of this proposed body or entity, whatever it's going to be, and its relationship with the MAG. So that's very much our focus today. There are 2 other questions, as I've mentioned, but we don't want to get into those details now, as Sandra made clear. Let's get to the key issue of what should be implemented and how, in terms of an additional functionality of what I believe most stakeholders recognize needs to be introduced, and that is some strategic approach to delivering the outcomes of the IGF, and it connects the IGF discussions of stakeholders with the decision makers in governments and intergovernmental organizations, in the private sector, and also potentially civil society leaders as well. So there's broad support for that, as I read the situation, that there needs to be this critical strengthening of the IGF. But let's consider how it's done. So it's a matter of speaking on, specifically on this. Please raise your hand in order to put your question. State who you are and who you are representing, and also what stakeholder constituency you are part of. Speak slowly so transcribers and all non-native English speakers can follow you easily. And keep to 3 minutes. We'll try. We haven't got much time, and I've spoken too much already, I know. But let's try to keep to a steady series of questions, and hopefully we'll get all perspectives coming in from all stakeholder constituencies. I know a lot of governments are following this very closely, and we have a lot of governments on the call today. But let's ensure we get other stakeholder constituencies participating as well. So let's turn to first question, which is in two parts. If it's up on the screen, yes, thank you, Sandra. So let's go to the first part of question one, which is, what do you consider should be priority functions of this multi-stakeholder high-level body, should it be established? Note that it says that. And the paragraph earlier talks about what kind of functions they have in mind: addressing urgent issues, coordinating follow-up actions on IGF discussions, and relaying proposed policy approaches and recommendations, tangible outcomes of the IGF, if you like, to the decision-taking forum. So that's what it says in the paragraph. There may be other functions you want to think about, and you may want to discuss what its priorities are, as the question puts it. So let's kick off with that first part of question one, and let's see who wants to initiate the discussion. Has anybody raised their hand?
Yes, Amalie de Silva Mitchell has raised her hand.
Okay, Amalie, please go ahead and say who you are and so on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Amalie de Silva Mitchell, and I'm the coordinator for the IGF recognized Dynamic Coalition on Data-Driven Health Technologies. I just want to say, just from a very ordinary person's perspective, when I look at high-level panels and councils and so forth, the UN, I see it as emergency, crisis, security response. And I think we saw last year, the real need for bridging the digital gap in crisis situations. I know the Dynamic Coalition on Internet Connectivity published a book highlighting these impacts, on society in times of crisis. And I think there's a very useful role for a panel that will deal with emergency response. Maybe they work with UNHCR, maybe with UNICEF, and so forth, to really assist globally issues that happen when we have, we have COVID this time, but there's earthquakes, there are tsunamis, and so forth, and bringing everyone together to support globally. So I think the focus really should be on crisis and emergency management, which is something we don't have right now. So thank you for this opportunity to comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Amalie. That's an interesting point, that you see a specific function for some new group to swing into action, if you like, and I mean, how do you think that for the consideration of such an emergency situation should then be taken forward in terms of stakeholder engagement? Did you?
Yes, I actually did make a submission, and going with that, I think the body should be larger, and obviously I'm coming from a dynamic coalition perspective, so I do think that dynamic coalitions really should be part of that. Coalitions are very good at observing what's going on at the grassroots level, very good for risk management, and then sort of bringing those issues up. So I think it should be a wider group, but basically the focus, I think, is emergency. So we're looking at, our day-to-day sort of SDG roles, UNDP type of roles within the MAG and the rest of it. But this is just a focus group on emergency crisis management. So that's kind of, I haven't thought about it too much more than that, other than that focus. Thank you.
Thank you, Amali. I think that's probably part of what the roadmap is saying in terms of addressing urgent issues. So I think that's a valid definition. I mean, one comment I've heard is that what the paragraph says needs a lot more clarification as to what the intention is. So your suggestion is helpful in terms of going down into a bit more detail as to what the functionality should mean. So let's turn to another contributor. I can't see on my screen who else has raised a hand.
At the moment,
Sandra?
nobody has raised its hand, but I encourage everyone to just raise their hand. I'm managing the speaking queue.
I mean, as I said in my comments, my feeling is that there is broad agreement that there is a need for covering the gap between discussions and decisions. So in terms of functionality, this seems to me a critical one that has broad support, but maybe somebody wants to react to that.
Now we have Titi has raised her hand.
Okay, thanks a lot, Sandra. Thanks a lot, Mark. If I can just share my point, I think that it's important to have somebody that try to fill this gap, as you have mentioned before, because as from my experience from MAG member, I see, if you see the Tunis agenda, there are a lot of functions that the IGF should be do, and because the mandate of the IGS is quite broad, but there are some functions that the MAG, the Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group, I mean, as from my experience, is not able to do, because there is a lot of work to do. So I think it's important to have just a group which attend to the other function that MAG is not able to do, as to create a link and a bridge between the IGF and the decision-making body, because the discussion we are having in the IGF it's important. So it's important to have also an impact, and this impact should not be possible if we don't reach the decision making. So I think this is an important point that should be handled by the multi-stakeholder high-level body. So the three approach that we have discussed, as Giacomo has illustrated in the IGF strengthening MAG working group, are all valid, I think. But the important is try to reach the decision making. So whatever will be the decision, is important that this link will be strengthened, because at the moment the MAG, the main function is just developing the program, because the MAG doesn't have too much time. Also in the terms of reference, maybe there is something, the terms of reference of the MAG, I mean, there is something miss respect to the broader mandates that EGF has from the Tunis agenda. This is my point. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Titi. I think that's a very valid point about, well, first of all, the loading factor on the MAG. I mean, I've been a MAG member, and I know from experience, it's pretty hard work at times to sift and scrutinize all the proposals for workshops and other forms of sessions for inclusion in the program, and developing this thematic approach and so on. It's a lot of work, and it strikes me now that the MAG will have even more to do in terms of integrating intersessional activities into thematic and program settings and so on. So the loading on MAG members is increasing, I think, as changes to the IGF take place. IGF Plus becomes a reality. It's going to put more work it's going to direct more work to the MAG. So I think that's a very valid point. Any other comments relating to that?
Nigel has his hand up.
Nigel, please, Nigel. Yeah. Say who you are, because I think your role has changed recently.
Well, I think actually, Titi, no, someone else had their hand up before me, did they? No, they didn't. Perhaps they didn't. No, I was trying to make sure I wasn't butting. Yes, sorry. Good morning. Thank you, Mark. Yes, I'm Nigel Hickson. So I'm in the Department of Culture, Media and Sport in the UK government. And it's a real privilege to be speaking this morning, and thank you very much, Sandra, for organising this session, which I think is very timely indeed, given the discussions we had in the MAG last week and the open consultation, which were very constructive indeed, and of course this consultation, which is equally important. I mean, the UK, as Mark alluded to, has been a supporter of the IGF since its inception in Rome 2006, and of course some of us are old enough, as you can tell by the lack of hair, to have sat in some of the discussions in 2003 and 2005 during the WSIS when all this was kicking off. So it is very important that the IGF is strengthened. The UN high-level panel and the roadmap that came from that is very significant indeed. It is significant because it was a UN panel and then a roadmap endorsed by the UN that was advocating that the IGF should continue as a preeminent multi-stakeholder vehicle to discuss internet governance issues. And as such, we have to, as Mark has alluded, take advantage of that opportunity of the roadmap to take the IGF forward, and the UK is committed to the improvements that have been proposed in the roadmap to the IGF. We believe it needs to be strengthened. The funding needs to be on a more stable footing, and indeed it needs to be more strategic in its thinking and more output orientated. Having said that, the high-level body is an important component of that. It's important, obviously, as the authors recognise that the IGF and the MAG has a place on the stage, on the global stage, in other policy and decision-making fora. But we fundamentally believe that this is best effected through option B in the paper, an excellent paper set out by the strategic working group. We believe that an executive committee, or call it what you want, of the MAG, made up of different stakeholders, 5, 6, 7 people, whatever, chaired by the chair of the MAG, would be able to facilitate that role. We firmly believe that within the MAG, it would be effective and it would be efficient. A high-level body sitting completely outside the MAG, we're concerned about, because we think it would have the danger of sucking the oxygen out of the IGF process. It would facilitate discussion, perhaps, but we don't think it would be best for the IGF. Look, I'm going to stop here because I'm out of time and I just waffle away. We'll obviously, as the UK government, commit to the questionnaire that has been circulated, and thank you very much for this discussion, and we look forward to taking part in further dialogue on this important issue. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Nigel, and I think now we're moving into the second part of the question 1 in the questionnaire survey with regard to the relationship with the MAG and whether we have separate entities. For what I think I'm hearing on this call is agreement that there should be some functionality for reaching out to decision takers following the discussions at the IGF, and the question now is how to implement that in an effective way, given the fact that there is already a structure of the IGF, which is an advisory group and with the Secretariat supporting the work of the advisory group in developing primarily, as Didi described earlier, the program and the direction of travel in terms of the content of the IGF and so on. So we're getting to this critical issue and its relevance to the work of the MAG working group on strategy, which Giacomo described in identifying 3 options for that implementation. So just to remind you what question 1 says in exactly in the question relating to the relationship with the MAG. Is it on the screen?
Mark, I stopped screen sharing because participants suggested to do so, but we have quite a queue of operation now. Quite a lot of people have raised hands.
Right.
So the next.
Well,
the next would be Estefe Sanz, then Giacomo, Jorge, Timea, and Colin in this order.
Hi.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, you can see me now. Hi, this is Estefe Sanz. I work for the European Commission. I'm the head of the Internet governance sector. Thanks a lot for giving me the floor and for letting us participate in this very interesting discussion. So we've been discussing intensively the question of the high-level body within the Commission, because we think it's indeed an important, potentially important new piece of the overall digital cooperation architecture. We welcome the first question actually of the questionnaire, especially the first question. Let's say we would not move too quickly to the second question, because it seems that the UN is really opening up the question of the function of the multi-stakeholder high-level body for discussion, and we think it's a good thing to do, because we take note and we appreciate all the concerns around the risk that the body undermines and takes attention away from the IGF. We think that this is a risk that should be taken into account. Thus, we think that we really have to work towards a very well-defined and limited scope of this high-level body, and we have a very clear idea on what this should be, which is basically to bring high-level internet decision makers to the IGF table to openly discuss policy proposals, concrete policy proposals with the multi-stakeholder community. So we think that that should be the main thing, because there is really no global fora at this point that fulfills that role. When we think about decision makers, internet decision makers, we think about big states, but also big companies, big regions, big organizations that take decisions related to the internet that have a global effect. This is something that by definition needs to be discussed with the global community, because they are all affected by this, and the IGF can play that role, and the high-level body can play that role within the MAC structure. All the other functions, we really think that the MAC can perform them, and it's more or less within their mandate to perform them. And it's maybe a question of making it more clear that the MAC should do that. But we would reserve the high-level body to that specific function, and that's it. That would be our approach. We have to take into account that when we talk about the high-level body, we're talking about high-level people that, of course, have the capacity to attract media attention. And we think that this capacity should be at the service of the IGF, of bringing people to discuss key policies with the IGF and the multi-stakeholder community. We think that that's not there now, and that should be the function. Thank you.
Thank you, Estef. That's bang on 3 minutes as well, so that's much appreciated. So as I understand it correctly, you're saying basically the primary role is to bring the decision takers into the IGF, to bring them into the IGF as active participants engaging with the IGF community.
Right.
Or is it a two-way thing?
No, it's just, you know, as an example, we've made this pitch a lot of time. Probably some of you have heard it a lot, and we are, you know, distributing our responses to the questionnaire. But as a primary example, we put ourselves of this role. In the IGF 2020, the Commission was ready to discuss what was still a half-baked Digital Services Act proposal. We were ready to present the Digital Services Act proposal to the global multi-stakeholder community, gather feedback from the multi-stakeholder community when the proposal was not completely ready. We are fully aware that this is a regional decision that concerns Europe, but it will have huge global impacts. Okay. So, you know, it's within our responsibility to take input from, you know, everyone who will be affected. Yes. But then everyone should be the same.
Okay, thank you, Esther. That's very clear. So let's go to the next speaker. I think I saw it was Giacomo. Yeah.
I don't know, because Sandra said that there is a different order. So
yeah, I'm a little bit confused how the order is. If it's as it's shown on my screen, that was usually the case, but I think Gonzalo was first, so we have to go the order from the top to the bottom, and that would give the next Gonzalo, and then.
Well, we are talking about a bottom-up process here, so that's,
let's do a bottom-up.
Okay.
So Gonzalo and then Timea.
Okay, so I was the last to join the queue, but anyway, thank you for the opportunity. So this is Gonzalo López Barajas. I work for Telefónica, so I'm representing the private sector. It is our view that to strengthen the IGF, the best approach would be to do it within the inside of the IGF. So that would certainly mean that the high-level body should be a part of the MAC themselves. In terms of if we should have MAC members taking part of this body, if it should be other representatives from higher level, I am not that sure. The problem, if we have very high representative members, is that it is more difficult to have them doing the job. So I think it would be better to assure that they are willing to take the effort, which seems going to be quite substantive, and maybe have a process within the MAC to select these members of the high-level body. So I'm not sure if it should be already MAC members or new people, but certainly I think the most transparent way would be to do a selection process to the MAC. And that would also imply that this high-level body would be accountable to the MAC themselves. So that's basically my approach. I think that having probably a small body would be good, and probably having the same number of representatives from women and men, so that we have no disparity on gender, and then if it's already defined at the beginning, it is all clear how this is going to function. So basically, that's my approach on the funding. I think that if it's a part of the MAG itself, it would be easier to fund. The resources would be not so great if it's a separate body. And from input I heard from other business colleagues, I think that the UN takes a cut of the funds that are devoted to the IGF. I think I heard that's a 13%. So this is not my idea, but I think it would be good that, for example, if the UN diverted back those 30%
Gonzalo, sorry to interrupt, but these are very important points you're making with regard to funding and so on. But we're going to keep the discussion focused on the functions and the relationship with the MAG today. I mean, some of those issues I'm sure will come up as a consequence of our discussions here today on functions and relationship with the MAG. So from what you're saying, I understand very clearly that you're seeing this function being carried out by a diverse range of stakeholders, gender balance within the current MAG structure. So this broadly coincide with approach B that was devised by the MAG working group on strategy, if I understand you correctly.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Gonzalo. Let's go to the next speaker, Would that be Jorge, or am I jumping around again too much?
Let's do the bottom-up approach first. So that would be Timea, and Jorge, then Giacomo, and then Rudolf Griedel, because I see it appears indeed in the order of raised hand.
Okay, Timea then, thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Thanks, Mark. Good morning, everyone. Timea Schutte speaking. I work with my day job at the International Chamber of Commerce with the business action to support the Information Society Basis Initiative. Freshly off the mag, so I get Mark's point on the level of work that is expected from MAG members. About our conversation today, I just want to say, representing the business community here, that we do see a lot of value in a lot of potential value in having a multi-stakeholder high-level body like this, and we agree with much of what has been said before about the need of that higher level function, as explained in paragraph 93A. What I want to add to the discussion is a little bit of a focus to the preamble of that paragraph of 93A, which states that the recommendations in 93A are made with a view to making the Internet Governance Forum more responsive and relevant to current digital issues. And to me, that implies two fundamental caveats for this body. The first, that this body is supposed to work, or is proposed to build up the reputation and the relevance of the IGF, not to pull attention away from it or any support away from it, be that in financial or otherwise. So for me, that is the first consideration. The second consideration is, and this relates close to the first, is that this body is there to support the work of the MAG. And potentially to fill in any gaps that were left, unfilled by what the MAG was unable to do or ill-equipped to do. For example, there has been a lot of talk about developing a multi-year work plan in the MAG, but that effort has been slower than hoped. So perhaps that would be something that the body can take up. So this is my first reaction on a very high level to the first part of this first question. But as you know, as they say, the devil's in the details, and I think there are very important considerations to make sure that the body that we're envisioning is actually equipped to function, and that it can take some pragmatic steps forward. So that would include very important considerations around, how to ensure coordinations with different parts of this ecosystem, including the MAG, but the Tech Envoy's office, the UNSG's office, other pieces of the puzzle. And there, I think we need to also give important consideration the level of engagement we are expecting from these people, what level of support they will need from the Secretariat, the funding, all of that. I know it's not the focus of this conversation today, but I want to just put on the record that we do need to have those conversations before we can agree or disagree on establishing this body. Thank you, Mark. Sorry for taking over a little bit more of my time.
That's fine. That's fine. You're almost bang on. That's great. Thank you very much, Timea. I think you're making some very valid points. I mean, one issue that really does concern me and some others, some other observers, is that we don't want to compromise the integrity of the bottom-up process of the IGF as overseen by the MAG through this new board or committee or whatever it is, exercising some discretion, for example, over what to prioritize in terms of outcomes or direction or setting of multi-year targets potentially. This is a lot of important, there are a lot of important issues there about how this new entity is going to operate vis-a-vis the MAG's role and responsibilities in charge of the bottom-up process. So I hope I've captured a little bit of your comment there, and let's move on to the next speaker. Would that be Rudolf?
Jorge, Giacomo, and then
Jorge, Giacomo, then Rudolf. Okay, I should have noted it down. Sorry.
Hello, thank you, Mark. This is Jorge Cancio from the Swiss government. Thank you for giving me the floor. regarding functions, I think that if we look at the overall picture, it is important that we provide for such functions to be incorporated and effectively performed within the IGF, because really providing the IGF with this possibility of being politically more visible, more effective, and bridging the gap between expert discussions and decision making is really in the interest of all European stakeholders to make this IGF platform, which is multi-stakeholder, but also is bound to the UN and has its universal legitimacy, more effective, more inclusive. And in that regard, really the functions of 93A are key. And I feel they really go to what Estere was saying also, to provide a table for that high-level discussions amongst decision makers or people who belong to the decision-making level. So I feel that 93A really paraphrases that, looking at different angles, follow-up action to the IGF discussions, addressing urgent issues, as Amalie was saying, or relaying what the IGF outputs and discussions have come up with outcomes from the multi-stakeholder discussion and processes. So our input will go in that direction of supporting the functions, understanding that they cover this idea of providing a bridge to the decision-making levels. And regarding the relationship with the MAG, we think that what is key is to have strong collaboration links, and that the layer or the body, whatever is established, is representative enough and bottom-up enough of the whole stakeholder community. That's why we may favor more composition of between 15 and 20 people in order to be regionally gender-based and stakeholder diverse. So I'll leave it by that for the moment, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Jorge. That's a very good summary of the Swiss position. I just have one question, and you talked about the collaboration and the links with the MAG. In a couple of lines, I mean, any specifics on accountability to maximize transparency and accountability of the carrying out of this function of bridging, contacting political leaders, private sector leaders, and so on. Any thoughts on the ensuring accountability, briefly?
Sure. Thank you very much. I think that the three approaches share the view that we should build on the experiences of the MAG nomination system. So perhaps with even more clarity, more transparency, but based on nominations coming from the stakeholder groups, and with rotation built in, and so on and so forth. So to ensure that this body remains completely attached to the community and accountable to it.
Okay, thank you very much, Jorge. So Giacomo, I think I got it right, that one. Giacomo, yes. You're next.
Yes, I have a very specific point that it's interesting to develop, because I think that is currently not considered enough. And the point is about, as Amalie said and others have repeated, this new body will be helpful in reacting to emergency. If really we want this as one of the main functions, we need to reflect further on that, because, for instance, we say that this body is not to take the prerogative of the MAG, And so, for instance, if you have to react to a new issue, let's say what happened on social media during the Capitol Hill upheaval, then this body, how can react immediately and advise the Secretary General or the tech envoy? I think that this means that we need to insist on creating a repository of what has been discussed. And so put in value all the amount of knowledge and wisdom that there is within the IGF previous editions, and so that the advice that will be delivered is based on the real discussion that happened and the conclusion that happened in the previous IGF. So I think that this is a point on which we need to strengthen a little bit the concept, but is, in my opinion, is very promising, because if you do this opinion and advice based on the repository of knowledge that the IGF is, this would be really a change and an improving, because it means that it's not a talk shop, but is a talk shop that will be used for the decision-making process.
Yes, thank you, Giacomo. I think that's a very good reminder of the high-level panel's approach here to the IGF as developing itself much more as a resource that's accessible worldwide to assist sustainable development and to deal with emergency issues and crises and so on. It's the sort of observatory or whatever function that's going to be augmented, if you like, with the IGF. So that will help in terms of ensuring this high-level entity is able to make proposals, draw on established resources as you've described. So that's very helpful. Rudolf, let's hear from the German government. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, German government. Somehow I don't manage to activate my video, so you just have to listen to me. First of all, I just want to mention it, even though in this group or in this context it doesn't seem to be contentious, but I think it's important to state that this idea of a multi-stakeholder high-level body is not something that has been invented out of the heads of some people, or that has been created in a top-down approach. It is the result of multiple stakeholder consultations around the world. In the context of, for instance, the options paper that we were a co-champion of, but also beforehand, the roadmap and so forth. So even though this is not the question here, I just wanted to state there is, in our view, no question if there should be such a body. The question is how it should be designed, and that's now where I'm coming to. Of course, it needs to be attached to the IGF. It needs to be attached to the MAG. It needs, in our view, even more, it needs to be entwined with the MAG. So the idea of having some personal identity of the MAG chair and the vice chair of this new body, and the chair of this new body and the vice chair of the MAG, or something like that, seems very appealing to us, because then we have some kind of guarantee that this, what we all do not want, that this body lifts up like a satellite and floats above everything and controls everything, is a little bit reduced, or even strongly reduced. We might also think about giving the tech envoy a seat or an server status or something within this new body, so that there is also a connection, even though they should advise the tech envoy. But it's not the end of our thinking, but somehow we are of the opinion that the tech envoy should be part of this exercise. Should definitely have a rotating system. I think the number of 20 persons that has been mentioned already sometimes is also something that we think is a good size. The rotation should probably not be the same as the MAG. It should be a little bit shorter 2 years perhaps. Also in order to diminish the risks of it taking off somehow, and of course there should be stakeholder, geographical, gender balance, all these UN principles. That's for sure. In our view, and it has been said also, the function is to have a linkage between the decision world and the discussion world. We need to, and I think that's also the reason why so many stakeholders around the world were in favor of such kind of a body. We need to make sure that the IGF does not become self-referential, so that there is a hinge to the outside world, and the other way around. I think if we have this interconnection between what's happening in the discussion world, what's happening in the decision world, it is not only the results, the value of the results of the IGF to be transported outside, but also to bring things inside. That's a little bit along the lines what Esteve said.
Okay, Rudolf. Sorry to intervene, but you've gone over time a bit.
My clock doesn't run. I'm sorry. I'm still at 3 minutes.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
I just wanted to put.
Okay. I leave it at that. And then okay.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to put a point to you. I mean, the paragraph describes functions broadly, as you've said, coordinating and bridging the gaps and so on, but also addressing urgent issues. I didn't hear you mention that. Do you think that is an integral part of the function, and one that's going to help attract the right people to join this select group within the MAG structure? Because that's a point that's also cropping up, I think, certainly in my thoughts. How do you attract people at the sufficiently high level in private sector and government circles who are going to be very busy with something substantial in terms of a function, in addition to a relaying or communicating function? Do you think?
Yeah. Okay. That is actually
see what I mean?
something. Yeah, I do. Do you hear me?
Yes, I do. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. I have to say that this is something we have not have an intensive discussion within the government, and I see the point that this might be interesting for high-level people, this function, but I also see the point that Giacomo has raised. So I think we have to be very clever, and I have no idea, but we have to be very clever about responsibility, legitimacy, also the connection to the IGF system, to the MAG, because if things need to be fast, then normally ordinary procedures are left aside, and that's, I mean, within the nature of the thing. But we have to be sure that out of such situations, we do not create too much of, I would say, independency and too much of own life of this body.
So constructing the linkage. Yeah, so constructing the linkage as you described, with sort of shared chairing between the MAG chair and the chair of this new group is going to ensure that there is a strong linkage on which accountability and transparency can be founded, if I understood you correctly. Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much, Rudolf. Thank you for your important contribution, and also recounting the history of how this proposal has come about. That was very useful too. Appreciated. So on my screen, I see Chris Buckridge. Sandra, am I right?
You're absolutely right.
Okay, there we go.
The
Chris,
only one
over to you.
I'll start my own timer here. And first off, thank you, everyone, and apologies. I was only able to join this late, so apologies in advance if I'm repeating points that others have made here. And so I'm probably responding primarily to the last few speakers here. Chris Buckridge from the RIPE NCC, and I don't think the RIPE NCC itself has a strong or fixed opinion on this discussion yet. We're sort of following with interest. I mean, what I find a little curious and wanted to maybe comment on or raise is partly the concept of this high-level body as a bridge or a link or relaying function. I see the IGF itself as a bridge and a link function. It's not a decision-making space. It brings together decision makers from other venues that actually are making decisions. So it itself serves as a link there. Now I can see there's perhaps a need, and I think Rudolf made some good points there about the IGF itself can become self-referential, can become a bit isolated. I wonder if the solution to that is providing yet another layer of translation back from the IGF itself. I think the more layers of translation and linkage we add, the more noise is added to the signal. And that's, I think, a danger to be alert to and aware of. I think the point about reacting to emergencies is an interesting one. And I think Giacomo made some really good points there in terms of, can this kind of a body actually respond to emergencies? I'm not sure I quite see the kind of emergency that would warrant emergency action by the IGF that this body would facilitate somehow. So maybe I'm missing some important case examples or scenarios there. But I do think the point about being able to call on the repository of knowledge and work that has gone into the IGF over the years is fundamentally important. And that's something that we've, I think, stressed in previous input, and been so happy to see the UK government's input on sort of developing the IGF website, making sure that all of the discussion and the output from those previous IGFs is available, is able to be accessed, is able to be called on when needed. So that's a little different to the body itself, but I think sort of a really fundamental point. The last point I just want to make very briefly, as I run out of time, I do hear sort of the reference to there being a nominating process for the MAG, and this being, maybe calling on that. As someone who's taken part and sort of chaired some elements of the nomination process in the technical community, that raises my concerns a little, because I think that nomination process hasn't always been trouble-free. It hasn't always been as transparent as stakeholders would want. So I think there is certainly some room for improvement if that's what we're looking at. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris, for your comments there. And I mean, RIPE NCC does a lot of valuable work in outreach. I know from my experience when I was working for the UK government, it was a very important forum. And I take it from your comments that you are going to submit a response to the questionnaire. Is that right? Or I mean, it is a tight deadline. I mean, everybody's sort of cringing if given that it's useful to make stakeholder consultations and so on.
Yeah, ideally, yes. I'm maybe not willing to go quite on record yet to absolutely commit to it, but yes, I mean, as I say, we're doing our best to sort of be active contributors to this discussion. So
right, okay, great. Thanks very much for your contribution. We've got about maybe another 10 minutes or so, Sandra, haven't we, before we start to think about wrapping up. But so who hasn't spoken that wants to get their views in on functions, relationship with the MAG, the sort of architecture, if you like, of IGF Plus that would have perhaps the, as the working group was describing it, a MAG Plus type evolution. Does anybody want to? Siva Subramanian, sorry, I forgot.
Mark, just let me summarize what's in the chat.
Yeah, please.
There are a lot of supporting comments in the chat to what the previous speaker has been said. Colin, for instance, she lowered her hand because she had a very pointed comment to make that she refers to what Amalie said. Amalie was speaking first. The linkages to the Sustainable Development Goals and other part of the UN ecosystem. made her think that it would be useful for the new body to feed current decisions and conversations from the IGF in other tech-oriented UN bodies such as the ITU. And Jason replied to Gonzalo on the funding contributions. I go not into depth in this because funding is not subject to our discussion today. But Shiva from India made a lot of comments, and I see he has also raised his hand because he made quite a lot of comments. So I think it's better if he speaks up himself, and I would give the floor to Shiva.
Yes, Shiva, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. And I'm not, am I audible?
Yes, you
yes.
are.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't want to repeat the comments that I placed on chat. I want to emphasize one point. This high-level body would be of enormous support to the MAG. This body would bring all of MAG's visions to fruition. And for this to happen, this body needs to be formulated not in a manner of replicating the MAG and not in the manner of replicating MAG processes, and be somewhat detached and separate from the MAG as far as possible. MAG's presence in this body could be in the form of a seat for the MAG chair, and maybe for one or two past chairs or members or present members, with a certain degree of arbitrariness, not like a election process, not like a appointment process. And I think we can leave all this to the Secretary General himself and not constrain the Secretary General to follow rigid processes, the same rules and same set of procedures. And this is what I want to say about formulating the body. And please read it together with other comments that I made in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiva. Thank you for your comments now and also in the chat. That's very valuable. One point that struck me when you talked about how important this function of a high-level entity or group or whatever it is going to be in relation to the MAG, with regard to theme setting for the IGF and multi-year planning, as was mentioned earlier. Do you think this high-level entity should have some role vis-a-vis the MAG discussions on themes and examining questions over more than 1 year? Do you think there should be some function there? Function in terms of helping to set IGF themes and long-term strategy with regard to how to deal with some fundamental issues, be it access or cybersecurity or whatever, over a more than 1 year period. Maybe this is a question for everybody. Anybody want to chime in on that provocative statement? No. I raise it because I've got a feeling that there may be an expectation by prospective members of this high-level group that they would have the facility to contribute to identifying key themes and direction or strategic direction for the MAG as part of its role.
We have
Amali,
who would like to speak.
I see Amali has raised her hand. Yeah.
Hi, thank you, Mark. Just, I'm not sure whether it's totally in context, but something, the new policy panel that's being initiated or climate change and environment. I think that's another role for this this high-level panel, because it's becoming a global emergency, and under the context of my saying, I think the focus of this group should be emergency, crisis response, and security management. I think climate change should also be put in there because it requires a global response, and we know the digital services are going to be used to manage climate change. So I think this is something that body really it'll need, very large companies getting involved with satellites and all these kinds of things. So, I just want to put that in as another piece of work that this body should please consider. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mali. And of course, we're at a time when the IGF is embarking on a new policy network on environmental issues. I think what you're saying has important resonance, that the high-level group should have some opportunity to contribute to the development of that policy network, or advocacy of the policy network's outcomes, at least across the wider ecosystem of internet governance and the UN system, as was mentioned earlier. My expectation from maybe Jason from the UN Office of Technology side, Technology Envoy side, might wish to comment on this, is that the Tech Envoy will draw on what this high-level group has recommended from the IGF outcomes to cascade across the UN system. That will be an important function of the bridge, if you like, from the IGF community of stakeholders and experts to the UN system. I don't know if Jason wants to react to that.
Yes, the Envoy is intended to be a link between these different entities and the outcomes or views of the high-level body and the MAG and what happens at the IGF. So we do envisage the Envoy really linking as much as possible between these different discussions and processes.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate very much your joining this European forum. That's great. Going back to the list, I see Rudolf wants to take the floor again. Sandra, is that right?
Thanks, Mark. It's in response to your question about the agenda setting function. I see that it might be very attractive for those high-ranking people to have an agenda setting function. I don't think that it would be wise to formally assign them with such a function, because that would inevitably go into the direction of top-down, and it would also provoke counter-reactions, very strong counter-reactions to the whole institution. I think what could be envisaged is more something like a practice. If there is a certain linkage between the MAG and the high-level body, I think the high-level body would be automatically be involved in the not in the agenda setting, but in the agenda shaping. So if, for instance, which are the 3 or 4 baskets that themes should fall into, and that, I think that is something that where the high-level body could give an advice, but not more.
Thank you, Rudolf. That's very clear, very helpful. Thank you. Jorge, I see, raise your hand, please.
Yes, thank you, Mark. Very quickly to your question, just to draw your attention that we have basically the same language and the 3 approaches on this matter. And in there, the MAG working group came up with the wording that this high-level body or layer would deliver strategic inputs, including from other digital cooperation fora, to the MAG on the annual program and intersessional activities, contributing also to the pluriannual working plan of the IGF. And the way I took that now from approach C. And the idea basically is to deliver inputs, but the authority on the program making would still remain in the MAG as the bottom-up body in this regard.
Thank you, Jorge, for bringing that reference to our attention, and that's a very clear distinguishing of respective roles that you just recounted. So I think my understanding is that there is a lot of support among stakeholders for exactly that approach. Now we're getting close to closing time. I don't see anybody else's hand raised. Anything more in the chat, Sandra? Sorry, I'm not a great multitasker, so I haven't been able to follow the chat. I'll have to catch up later myself.
Yeah, you're doing great, Mark. There was support for what Rudolf just said, and also what Nigel mentioned, that it would be a real problem if the high-level body undermines the bottom-up process. I think that's one of the key messages we can take from this discussion here. And Alicia is sharing just a comment right now. She apologized for background noise, and that's why she puts the comments in the chat, and I just read it out loud. I think that the multi-stakeholder high-level body should also really discuss the outcomes of the IGF. As far as I have understood, it is difficult to effectively use the outcomes in other UN agencies or possibly other international organizations as the World Bank, etc. I think the agenda should also be partly set by the MAG and outcomes of best practice forums and dynamic coalitions. Not too much focus on emergencies. There is a need for a long-term vision for digitization. The people in the multi-stakeholder high-level body would be able to help from this. For her introduction, she's from the Dutch government, but they haven't yet formally decided on the position. So that was from Alicia Heaver.
Thank you very much, Alicia.
She is the successor of, I know her already, she's the successor of Arnold van Rijn, so for those who don't know her yet.
Right.
Okay, no other comments are in the chat so far.
Okay. Well, we're getting very close to the end of our time, if I understand correctly, Sandra. I think it's been a great discussion, and I hope we've managed to hit on some of the fundamentals of the questions, the key questions about functions and relationship with the MAG, and we've touched on other aspects that flow from that, such as funding and so on, costing, but we haven't invited specifically comments on that, but all contributions have been very, very valid and much appreciated. Now, as to next steps, I think I'm going to hand back to Sandra to explain how we're going to go forward from this discussion, where I've detected a lot of commonality in comments and useful suggestions. And also, I feel some of the questions have identified where more clarification is needed in the proposal with regard to functions. There's a lot more work to be done. The more you look at it, the more extensive this particular proposal could be in terms of impact and placement within the structure of the IGF in such a way that it does not compromise the bottom-up multi-stakeholder core functionality, which is long tried and tested, overseen by the MAG and the Secretariat. So back to you, Sandra, I think, from my take on this discussion, and we please explain the next steps so that people can follow and so on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, also for this wonderful moderation. I shared my screen already with you. What we will do today, we will publish the recording immediately, and we have also taken the transcript that will be published once it's finished. But what we will do also today is summarizing the discussion on question 1 of the survey, on the function and on the relationship to the mark. And this we will publish on our commenting platform. And possibly some of you know this commenting platform already. You have a direct link from our meeting website. And this is how the commenting platform looks like. We will publish the 2 short paragraphs from our discussion there and invite for comments possibly until the end of the week. We know the timing is rather short because the survey is only open until the 8th of March. We will see if we really can come up with a shared view of the participants today, and this will be submitted via the survey. Alternatively, if we don't really find a common ground or a shared view, we will just share the link to our commenting platform so that at least what has been discussed today will be part of the further discussion and consultation process of the UN. So we will then simply share the link to the commenting platform. And we invite you to, we will inform you via email once it's up and ready. But we invite you to use that additional opportunity on the commenting platform to express support or disagreement if you have any. And we will inform you about the process, how to move forward. It's a little bit of an experiment. Finding consensus on such an important question is difficult, but we were always asked to at least try to find common ground and find consensus from European stakeholders. So let's see how far we get here, and we will keep you up to date. I would like to thank everyone for participating in this meeting. I think it was a very good one. We will have future EuroDIG extras, and if you have a topic that you would like to discuss or you would like to propose, please send us a message and we can consider this for one of the next extras. As you see, it's a very easily prepared format. It's merely discussion, not panel discussion, but everyone is just invited to contribute to the discussion. And I checked the chat for a last time. I see no significant, no, I see no messages at all. And with this, I'd like to thank again everyone and declare the meeting as closed. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you again for all your contributions.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye all.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you very much.